Welcome to a journey of karma, redemption, and the boundless compassion of the Buddhas. In this story, we explore the intertwined fates of Princess Thanghoa, the prince consort, and those impacted by their actions during the Song Dynasty. Through lifetimes of joy, sorrow, and spiritual growth, this tale serves as a profound reminder of the law of cause and effect and the power of repentance. Let's uncover the lessons hidden within this timeless narrative. Princess Thanghoa. This is a true story that occurred during the Song Dynasty in my country. The main character later reincarnated in Taiwan. Please be patient and read to understand more about the cause and effect retribution. During the Song Dynasty, there was a princess named Thanghoa. She was proud and elegant. At the tender age of 18, unmarried, and extraordinarily beautiful. One day, while staying at the Zhaohua Palace, she overheard her father, the emperor, and her mother, the empress, discussing a newly crowned scholar named Mandat. He was a young man renowned for his literary talent and poetic skills, and also an exceptional musician. The emperor later invited Mandat to the palace to perform for the royal family and nobles. He commanded the empress, the royal consorts, the princess, and princes from the 3 palaces and 72 courtyards to gather at the Yangsheng Hall for a banquet with music. The emperor ordered Mandat to play the lute. As he played and sang, his voice was deep and melodious, captivating all who listened. Everyone applauded and praised his performance. The consorts and princesses whispered excitedly about Mandat. Princess Thanghoa, in particular, was deeply impressed by his talent and graceful demeanor, admiring his elegant and handsome appearance. One day, as the emperor and empress were discussing Thanghoa's marriage prospects, the princess happened to walk in. The emperor said, "You've come at just the right time. We were discussing your marriage. Do you have someone in mind?" The princess blushed and replied, "I'm only 18, still so young. Why rush?" "Father," the empress interjected, 18 is not young at all. I entered the palace to serve the emperor when I was just 16, and it's been over 20 years now. A man marries young. A woman weds early. Delaying only leads to unnecessary worries. One day, you'll regret waiting too long." Pressed by her mother, the princess finally said, "Recently, I saw the newly crowned scholar Mandat. He is young, talented, and promising, a true gentleman. His literary skills are unmatched, and his musical abilities are extraordinary. He is truly admirable." The emperor and empress, noticing how highly Thanghoa praised Mandat, immediately understood that she was fond of him. They secretly instructed the prime minister to act as a matchmaker and arrange a marriage between the two. 2 days later, when Mandat came to the palace on official business, the prime minister asked him, "Young scholar, you are exceptionally talented, with admirable qualities and a distinguished appearance. May I ask, are you married?" Mandat replied, "I have been married for over 4 years, Your Excellency." The prime minister sighed. "What a pity. Today, His Majesty expressed his desire to marry Princess Thanghoa to you. What do you think?" Mandat, startled, asked, "Do you mean the emperor wishes to make me a prince consort?" "Yes, young scholar. Think it over carefully. If you marry the princess and become a prince consort, you'll enjoy a lifetime of wealth and prosperity." Mandat thought of his impoverished background, how even securing 3 meals a day had been a struggle. His wife had sacrificed her beautiful hair, selling it to fund his journey to the capital for the examination. Returning to such hardship was unappealing. Moreover, Princess Thanghoa was extraordinarily beautiful. Who wouldn't seize the opportunity to marry such a radiant and noble woman? With this in mind, he agreed. Not long after, Mandat and Princess Thanghoa's wedding took place with grand festivities. On their wedding night, when Mandat lifted the bridal veil, he was dazzled by the princess's beauty. She smiled sweetly at him, filling him with pride. Becoming a prince consort immediately after achieving the top scholarly title was truly a case of 10 years of obscurity, ignored by all, 1 day of success, valued by everyone. 3 years passed, and Mandat had not returned home. He completely forgot about the wife who had sacrificed so much for him, waiting day after day, longing for his return. She had cut off her long, beautiful hair to support his dreams. How heartless and ungrateful he had become, casting aside the old for the new. One day, Myloan, Mandat's former wife, heard rumors that Mandat had become a government official. Overjoyed, she quickly borrowed 2 taels of silver from her neighbors to travel to the capital and reunite with her husband. The journey was arduous, filled with countless difficulties, but she eventually reached the capital city. Upon arrival, however, she was struck with devastating news. Mandat had married Princess Thanghoa and was now living happily with her as the prince consort. Her heart was filled with sorrow as she realized she was now alone in the vast capital, with no family or friends to turn to. Betrayed by her husband, who had forsaken her for a new life, she was overwhelmed with anguish. She wanted to cry, but no tears would come. After much thought, she decided, since I've come all this way, I must take a chance. No matter the outcome, I must try to meet my husband. After making inquiries, she learned that the prince consort's residence was located in the western outskirts of the city. Determined, she went straight there. Unfortunately, Mandat was not home, and she had to return several times before she finally managed to meet him. When Mandat saw her, he was visibly tense and anxious. He quickly arranged for her to stay temporarily at a nearby household. From then on, Mandat frequently visited Myloan in secret, concealing his actions from Princess Thanghoa. 3 months later, Myloan became pregnant. It wasn't long before word of this reached the princess. Princess Thanghoa was furious but unsure of how to handle the situation. She confided in her trusted maid, Kyo, who suggested, "We must eliminate her immediately to avoid any complications." The princess found this advice reasonable and ordered Kyo to locate Myloan at once. Kyo sought out Mandat's personal page boy, hoping to find information about his former wife. At first, the page boy refused to speak, but after being bribed with 10 taels of silver, he revealed, Mandat's former wife is staying at Zhang San's house in the eastern outskirts of the city, not far from here. Armed with this knowledge, Kyo eagerly returned to report to the princess. The princess then ordered Kyo to summon Myloan. Myloan, who had once endured a life of poverty and hardship in her rural village with her husband, had shared a deep and loving bond with him. Despite their struggles, the villagers admired them for Mandat's intellect, talent, and musical prowess. When Mandat left to pursue his dreams, she had supported him wholeheartedly, even sacrificing her long, beautiful hair to fund his journey to the capital. After passing the imperial examination as the top scholar, Mandat was ensnared by Princess Thanghoa's favor and chosen as the prince consort. 3 years passed without any word, and Myloan embarked on a long, arduous journey to find him. Mandat had arranged for her to stay with his close friend, Zhang San. He visited her daily, and when she became pregnant, he was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a father. Excitedly, he shared the news with his close friends. Unfortunately, word spread, and the news eventually reached Princess Thanghoa. Enraged, the princess commanded her trusted maid, Kyo, to deal with Myloan. Kyo arrived at Zhang San's house when he was away, finding only Myloan at home. Myloan, with her delicate features, fair complexion, and long, flowing hair, radiated elegance and charm. Her serene and graceful demeanor suggested she was cherished and cared for. Kyo couldn't help but think, no wonder the prince consort is so captivated by her beauty. She's truly stunning. How could he possibly forget such a beloved wife? Filled with envy, Kyo composed herself and feigned ignorance. "Excuse me, is Myloan home?" she asked politely. Startled, Myloan observed the elegantly dressed woman before her, clearly not an ordinary citizen. Curious yet cautious, she replied, "I am Myloan. Who are you? And why are you looking for me?" "I am Kyo, maid to Princess Thanghoa," Kyo replied. "The princess has sent me to invite you to enjoy wealth and luxury. Please come with me to the prince consort's residence. There's no need to stay in this humble place any longer." Overjoyed by the unexpected invitation, Myloan quickly accompanied Kyo by carriage to the princess's residence. When Princess Thanghoa saw Myloan, her heart burned with anger. She thought to herself, "Just wait and see how I deal with you." Meanwhile, Myloan was awestruck by the grandeur of the prince consort's residence. It was spacious, lavish, and magnificently decorated. She noticed Princess Thanghoa seated high on a throne, surrounded by a line of maids, while servants bustled in and out. The princess, though incomparably beautiful, wore an expression of fierce jealousy and intimidating authority, striking fear into Myloan's heart. A sense of unease crept over her as she stood before the princess. Unsure of what was to come, Princess Thanghoa questioned Myloan sharply. "Are you Myloan, the woman Mandat married in his hometown?" Myloan quickly replied, "Yes, Your Highness. I am Myloan, Mandat's wife. It's been so long since he left for the capital that I had no choice but to come here to reunite with him. I humbly plead for your mercy and ask you to grant my wish." Upon hearing this, the princess erupted in anger, slamming the table and issuing an order. "Here are 300 taels of silver. Take them and return to your village immediately. From this moment on, you are to sever all ties with Mandat. You are forbidden from seeing him ever again." Devastated, Myloan began to sob bitterly and cried out, "I don't want your silver. I only want my husband." Seeing that money had no effect, the situation became increasingly challenging, and Princess Thanghoa started contemplating ways to address the matter. Influenced by Kyo's suggestion, with a stern expression, she said, "Why are you rejecting my goodwill? I offered you silver, but you refused. This defiance is unacceptable." Then, she signaled for her attendants to intervene and resolve the issue. Myloan, deeply hurt by the situation, exclaimed emotionally, "Thanghoa, this is unfair. You've taken away what I hold most dear, and now you wish to dismiss me completely. I hope one day you'll understand my pain and regret your actions." But before Myloan could finish her sentence, the princess's guards dragged her away. She met a tragic fate, and her story ended in a secluded grassy field outside the city. Not long after, while strolling outside, Princess Thanghoa overheard two maids whispering about her rival. Irritated and worried about rumors spreading, the princess didn't know how to silence the gossip. Her nursemaid, who was standing nearby, offered advice. "Your Highness, perhaps it would be wise to address the concerns of those who were aware of the events that day to ensure everything remains peaceful and harmonious. That way, the prince consort will never find out, and your marriage will remain intact." Finding the suggestion reasonable, the princess decided to address the situation with those involved to keep the matter discreet. Among them was a maid named Anna, whose younger sister, Adan, also worked as a servant in the princess's palace. Deeply bonded as siblings, Adan was distressed upon hearing rumors about her sister's potential danger. She immediately went to the princess, knelt before her, and pleaded for her sister's safety. Through tears, Adan begged, "Your Highness, please spare my sister. I will do anything to serve you if it means saving her." The princess, already in a bad mood, dismissed Adan's request with a wave of her hand. In her frustration, she accidentally knocked over a vase, which fell and struck Adan. The unexpected accident left Adan injured, and despite medical efforts, she could not recover. Throughout all these events, Prince Consort Mandat remained unaware of the challenges and complexities surrounding Princess Thanghoa's decisions. The princess had carefully managed the situation, ensuring he remained focused on his duties and unaware of any discord. Years passed peacefully. Over a decade later, Princess Thanghoa passed away due to natural causes, and not long after, Mandat also peacefully departed, reuniting with her in the afterlife. Rebirth in Taiwan. In the 38th year of the Republic of China, 1949, Prince Consort Mandat was reincarnated into the Wu family in Tainan, Taiwan, as a boy named Danheng. By the age of 5 or 6, Danheng began learning to play the violin. Due to his innate musical talent from his past life, he quickly excelled. His music teacher found that a single lesson was enough for Danheng to grasp complex techniques, and his skill soon surpassed that of his teacher, producing extraordinarily beautiful melodies. Coincidentally, Princess Thanghoa was also reincarnated, this time into a farming family in Kaohsiung, Taiwan, as a girl named Mile. Time passed quickly, and before long, Mile grew into a charming and intelligent young woman. Meanwhile, Danheng dedicated more than a decade to studying music before traveling to Europe to study violin under a renowned master. After achieving mastery, he returned to Taiwan as a celebrated violinist. It wasn't long before mutual friends introduced Danheng to Mile. Over the next 2 years, the pair grew close, discovering a deep connection and shared interests. Eventually, they married and settled in Taipei. Their life together was much like that of any ordinary couple. Mile's spiritual journey. A few years later, Mile made many good friends who introduced her to Buddhism. She took refuge in the Three Jewels. Becoming a devoted disciple, she practiced kindness, maintained a vegetarian diet, and often visited temples to offer prayers and donations. As Mile deepened her understanding of Buddhist teachings, she encouraged Danheng to take refuge as well. However, he resisted her efforts, immersing himself in worldly pleasures. This caused Mile great sorrow. She frequently prayed before the Buddha, chanting his name and asking the Bodhisattva Guanyin to guide her husband toward enlightenment. The crab and the miracle. One day, a friend gifted Danheng a large crab, which delighted him. He eagerly anticipated a delicious meal that evening. When Mile saw the crab, she felt deep sympathy for the creature. Knowing her husband's intentions, quietly, she prayed to the Bodhisattva Guanyin to save the crab from its fate. As night fell, Mile excused herself and went to bed, leaving Danheng in the kitchen preparing the crab. He told her, "You go ahead and sleep. I'll cook the crab to enjoy a nice meal." Though troubled, Mile continued her prayers, hoping for a miracle. Meanwhile, Danheng placed a pot of water on the stove, intending to prepare the crab for cooking. As he reached for it, the crab began spinning frantically in the bucket. When he moved closer, it raised its claws, trembling as if in fear. This unexpected behavior stopped Danheng in his tracks. A sudden thought struck him. How thoughtless am I? To take the life of this poor creature just to satisfy my taste buds? How pitiful this crab must be. Overcome with compassion, he decided to release the crab the following morning. Unaware of his change of heart, Mile felt restless in bed, unsure if the crab was safe. Unable to sleep, she continued chanting the name of the Bodhisattva. Finally, she decided to check on her husband. As she opened the door, she saw him and asked, "Did you eat the crab?" Danheng shook his head and replied, "No, I didn't. I decided to release it tomorrow. You can see for yourself, it's still alive in the kitchen." Doubtful yet hopeful, Mile hurried to the kitchen and found the crab unharmed in the bucket. She returned to her husband, who recounted the strange moment that had changed his mind. Mile was deeply moved and remembered the words from the Lotus Sutra. When one calls upon Guanyin, compassion arises immediately. She realized this was the work of the Bodhisattva, saving the crab through divine intervention. The next morning, the couple drove to a serene location to release the crab. Spring was in full bloom, with fresh green leaves sprouting on every branch, symbolizing new life. Under a large tree, they stopped by a stream. Mile carried the bucket, and together, they chanted the name of the Bodhisattva Guanyin, recited the great compassion mantra, and chanted Amitabha Buddha's name. As they set the crab free, it appeared joyful, waving its claws as if expressing gratitude for being spared. Mile and Danheng watched in awe, realizing how precious all lives are. He reflected deeply on his past consumption of sea creatures and felt a desire to change his ways. He vowed to change his ways, deeply touched by the experience. He decided to join Mile in adopting a vegetarian lifestyle from that day forward. With compassion guiding their path, the couple embraced a new chapter in their lives, filled with gratitude and a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of all beings. Rebirth and karma. Mile's journey. Mile had a younger sister who often experienced severe chest pain. After going to the hospital for a checkup and an X-ray, the doctor found no signs of illness. However, the X-ray revealed 2 large holes in her lungs, which puzzled everyone. Upon reflection, Mile's sister remembered playing with insects in her childhood, not realizing the harm it could cause them. Mile also had an older brother who, at the age of 30, suddenly lost the ability to move his legs. Doctors could not determine the cause. After Mile gave him a copy of the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva Sutra, He read it and realized that, as a child, he had often hurt small creatures like grasshoppers, dragonflies, and praying mantises. He understood that his current condition was the karmic retribution for the harm he had caused. This was in line with the teachings of the Ksitigarbha Sutra, which states, if one harms living beings, they will face karmic consequences, such as misfortune or injury. Seeing the karmic retribution in her brother and sister's lives, Mile began to reflect on her own past actions. Though she hadn't realized it before, she had committed many acts of taking life, especially when she didn't understand the law of karma. She often worried about when her own karmic retribution would come. In the past, her husband Danhung had a strong preference for eating meat, particularly seafood, and Mile would often have to kill chickens, ducks, and other animals to prepare his meals. She remembered the old saying, "A gentleman avoids the kitchen." This, she realized, might be the root cause of the karmic consequences that were now affecting her health. Since Mile learned about Buddhism and the law of karma, she became more aware of the consequences of her past actions. After taking refuge in the Buddha, she fell ill, and despite seeking treatment from both traditional and Western doctors throughout the province, her condition remained unchanged. When friends of Danhung heard about Mile's illness, they recommended that the couple travel to mainland China for treatment, as Taiwan had just opened its borders, allowing citizens to visit the mainland. The couple decided to take a flight to Thailand and then continue to Beijing. On the plane, they planned to first visit famous attractions such as Tiananmen Square and the Forbidden City before seeking medical treatment at a hospital in Beijing. Upon arriving in Beijing, they hired a city guide to take them to Tiananmen Square first. While walking around Tiananmen Square, a strange incident occurred. After several hours of walking, Mile felt exhausted and decided to head to a public restroom. As she entered the restroom, she suddenly saw a flashing red light, which caught her attention. She thought it might have been a trick of the light. When Mile returned to tell Danhung about the experience, he scolded her, saying, "You've been walking for so long, and now you're dizzy from exhaustion. It's just your eyes playing tricks on you." However, when Danhung later entered the restroom himself, he too saw the red light flash. He felt an unsettling sense of fear, as if he were facing some unseen force. Afterward, both Mile and Danhung felt uneasy, and Mile felt a sudden headache that made her uncomfortable. Danhung and their guide quickly escorted Mile back to the hotel, concerned for her well-being. A strange turn of events. Halfway through their journey, Mile's complexion grew increasingly pale, and she couldn't stop crying. Worried, Danhung decided to take her to a hospital. At a hospital in Beijing, the doctors gave Mile medication, and she fell into a deep sleep. The next day, when Danhung arrived at the hospital, a nurse pulled him aside and whispered, "Mister, your wife is acting very strangely. You should go see her yourself." Concerned, Danhung hurried to Mile's room and found her lying on the bed. Her voice had changed drastically, sounding like someone else entirely. She began speaking, "I am a maidservant from the Song Dynasty who once served Princess Thanghoa. In her past life, Mile was Princess Thanghoa, and you, Danhung, were her husband, the prince consort. Princess Thanghoa was involved in actions during her past life that caused harm to Miloan, the prince consort's first wife, as well as several of her maidservants, leading to lingering grievances. We, the spirits of those maids, have been searching for her reincarnation for a long time. Today, you brought her here, and now we demand justice. She must pay for what she has done to us." As soon as the spirit finished speaking, Mile began crying out in pain, her sobs echoing through the room. Horrified, Danhung felt chills run down his spine. He thought about the nurse's earlier comment and realized she must have overheard the strange words as well. Although he wanted to flee, he mustered his courage and spoke carefully. I beg you, please have mercy on my wife. Whatever you need, we will fulfill your requests. Just please spare her life." The spirit responded with a heavy tone. "Forgiveness? The actions of her past life caused great suffering to many, leaving unresolved pain and injustice. We endured countless hardships and have been seeking closure for a long time. After wandering for centuries, we have now found her and wished to seek resolution for the lingering grievances from the past. Shaking with fear, Danheng replied, "I understand your pain, but perhaps there is another way. If you allow her to live, we will make amends by performing a Liang Huang repentance ceremony to help you find peace and achieve liberation. Please, I beg you, let her go, and we will dedicate the merit to you." The spirit paused before saying, "If it weren't for your heartfelt plea, we would have taken her life today. But since you've promised, you must keep your word. If not, we will return. For now, we will leave." After the spirit departed, Miles' voice returned to normal, but she fell into a deep coma. Danheng quickly called for the doctors, who treated her and gradually stabilized her condition. After more than 10 days in the hospital, Miles' health began to improve, and she was eventually discharged. A visit to the antique market. Feeling relieved that Miles had recovered, Danheng said, "I heard Beijing has many wonderful antiques. My friends suggested we bring home at least one special item as a souvenir." 3 days after her discharge, the couple visited a famous antique shop. The staff warmly welcomed them and invited them to browse. As Danheng admired the various treasures, he picked up a porcelain bowl. The shopkeeper eagerly said, "Sir, you have a keen eye. This is the Nine Dragons Imperial Bowl from the Ming Dynasty, used by the Emperor himself. It's a very rare piece. For you, I'll offer a special price, only 15.000 new Taiwan dollars, about $440 US. Hearing this, Mal became annoyed and exclaimed, "A small bowl for such a high price? Are you joking? How can you charge 15.000 new Taiwan dollars when workers here only earn $6 to $7 a month? Do you think all Taiwanese people are rich?" Danheng chuckled at her remark, agreeing that she had a point. They continued exploring the shop when Miles' attention was suddenly drawn to a pair of beautiful vases about 25 centimeters tall. To Danheng's surprise, her expression shifted to one of fear, and her voice changed again. "I don't want to look at those vases. They remind me of something from a past life that caused me great fear and pain. I feel very uneasy seeing them and would rather not be near them. Please, take them away. Take them away." Danheng realized that the spirit had returned and was speaking through Mile again. Unsure of what to do, he watched helplessly as Mile collapsed. He immediately called for an ambulance and rushed her to the hospital. The doctor examined her and said, "Your wife was discharged too soon and hasn't fully recovered. The shock has worsened her condition. She needs to be hospitalized again, or her life may be in danger. It's best to take her back to Taiwan for treatment at a major hospital." Left with no other choice, Danheng followed the doctor's advice and arranged for their immediate return to Taiwan, chanting prayers to appease restless spirits. Upon returning to Taiwan, Danheng immediately admitted Mile to Taipei General Hospital. The doctors, unable to determine the cause of her coma, administered intravenous fluids to sustain her. As Mile's condition worsened, a desperate Danheng sought guidance from Master and at Temple X. The Master, along with a group of monks and nuns, began reciting sutras to aid in Mile's recovery. For 2 days and nights, the chanting continued, but Mile remained in a deep coma. Observing the situation, Master asked Danheng, "Did anything unusual happen during your trip to the mainland? It's strange that our prayers haven't helped." Danheng thought deeply before recounting everything that had transpired in Beijing, including the strange encounters with lingering spirits. Master then asked, "When you returned, did you perform the Liang Huang repentance to offer merit and peace to the spirits?" Danheng shook his head. "No, I was preoccupied with caring for my wife and didn't have time to arrange for the ceremony." Hearing this, Master explained, "Your wife's illness is likely caused by karmic creditors, spirits seeking resolution for past grievances. These are the very spirits you encountered in Beijing. They must have suffered greatly in the 3 lower realms. Now that you and your wife have started to follow a spiritual path, they see this as an opportunity to request prayers for their release. Without the Liang Huang repentance ceremony, they cannot move on, and your wife cannot fully recover. I urge you to fulfill this responsibility, otherwise, even the doctors will be unable to heal her." Moved to tears, Danheng knelt and prayed. To the spirits who have grievances against us, I beg you not to take my wife's life. Once she recovers, I promise to invite monks and nuns to perform the Liang Huang repentance ceremony for your liberation." The moment he made this vow, Mal stirred slightly and began breathing more steadily. Seeing this, Master N and the monks left to prepare for the ceremony. Mal remained hospitalized for 3 months, during which time Danheng, tirelessly caring for her, grew visibly thinner. Once she was discharged, she gradually regained her strength and health under his attentive care, fulfilling their promise. To honor their promise to the spirits, Master N organized a grand Liang Huang repentance ceremony at the temple. In addition to Danheng and Mile, her siblings also participated. The entire family chanted the repentance verses together. In the Liang Huang repentance assembly, flowers scatter like blessings. Upon completing the ceremony, sins are eradicated, and blessings arise. May we reunite in future Dharma assemblies. An hour into the ceremony, something strange occurred. Beads of cold sweat formed on Mile's forehead, dripping like large drops of rain. She became dizzy and unsteady on her feet. Alarmed, Danheng asked, "Are you all right? What's happening?" Too weak to respond, Mile's face turned pale and eventually darkened, as if she were losing consciousness. Danheng, noticing her condition, turned to her sister and said, "Mile doesn't look well. Please ask the monks to arrange a resting place for her. She may be overexerting herself, having just recovered from her illness. Also, call for Master N. I'm worried something might happen. I'll help Mile rest in the meantime." As Mile's sister went to fetch the master, Mile began writhing in pain, her groans echoing through the room. Unsure of how to help, Danheng and Mile's sister watched helplessly. Master N soon arrived and explained. According to the sutras, the Liang Huang repentance helps spirits ascend to higher realms. However, those with heavy karma or unresolved grievances may experience physical discomfort, headaches, or even pain during the ceremony. This is part of the karmic purification process. Concerned, Danheng asked, "Master, how long will it take for my wife to recover?" Master N replied, "It's hard to say. Each person's karma is unique, so the duration of their suffering varies. All we can do is continue to chant and dedicate merit to alleviate her condition." Suddenly, Mile let out a piercing wail that sent chills through everyone present. Her voice changed, and in a sorrowful tone, she began to speak. "I am Miloan, the wife of the prince consort during the Song Dynasty. In the past, Princess Thanghoa's actions caused me great suffering and an untimely end, leaving unresolved pain in my soul. Seeking resolution, I brought my grievances to the king of the underworld, who granted me the opportunity to find her reincarnation, Mile, and seek amends. Mile, the time has come for us to address this lingering karmic debt and find closure." Prayers for restless spirits. At the temple, everyone witnessing the scene felt an overwhelming sense of fear, their nerves trembling as if chilled to the bone. Master N addressed the spirit with calmness and compassion. "Miloan, I implore you to show mercy and spare Mile. She has already begun to walk a virtuous path, practicing a vegetarian diet and dedicating herself to spiritual cultivation. She has also vowed to recite the Liang Huang Repentance Sutra to dedicate merit to you. I hope that through this act of kindness, you can find peace and ascend to a higher realm, rather than continuing to seek revenge. Will you grant her this forgiveness?" The spirit replied with a mix of sorrow, frustration, and anger. "In her past life as Princess Thanghoa, her actions caused harm to me and many others, leaving behind unresolved grievances. Over lifetimes, she indulged in consuming animals, slaughtering chickens, ducks, fish, pigs, and more. Her sins are as vast as Mount Meru and as deep as the ocean. Just as described in the Ksitigarbha Sutra, sins that are immense and deep become obstacles on the path to enlightenment. How can the merit from reciting a single sutra erase such profound karmic debt?" Acknowledging the spirit's argument, Master N softened his tone and explained, "You are right. Her karmic burdens are indeed significant. However, the scriptures also teach us this. If a person sincerely repents with all their heart, acknowledging the harm they've caused in past lives and resolving to cultivate goodness, Even heavy karma can be mitigated through sincere repentance. The power of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas can help transform heavy burdens into lighter ones. Wouldn't it be better for you to let go of this resentment and allow her to continue on the path of repentance and redemption? The spirit wept bitterly, replying, "If I let go of my vengeance, how will my pain and suffering ever find justice? I cannot simply abandon my anger after all these years." Master and spoke with compassion. "I understand your pain, but your hatred is binding you to suffering in the lower realms. This cycle of vengeance is preventing you from moving forward. By forgiving her and allowing her to perform acts of merit dedicated to you, you will be able to transcend this suffering and attain the peace and happiness you deserve. Holding on to anger only brings more pain. Release it, and you will open the door to liberation." The spirit hesitated, then finally replied, "If it weren't for your wise and compassionate words, I would not have relented. Mile, you must remember this. If you fail to honor your commitment to repentance and accumulate merit for us, we will return to seek retribution. Do not forget your vow. For now, I will leave." As the spirit departed, Mile's condition visibly improved. After resting for a while, she rejoined the group and continued chanting the Liang Huang Repentance Sutra. By the end of the ceremony, Mile felt significantly better, her health steadily improving. A vision of karma. 6 months later, one night, Mile was resting in her room when she experienced a vivid vision. The animals she had harmed in her past lives, chickens, ducks, fish, pigs, and others, appeared before her, surrounding her and demanding repayment for their suffering. The vision was so vivid and terrifying that Mile screamed in fear. Rushing to her side, Danheng began reciting the Buddha's name and chanting the Rebirth mantra. In the midst of this chaos, Mile suddenly saw a large crab, the very same one they had released in an act of compassion years ago. The crab appeared and, to her astonishment, began to calm the angry animals, urging them to let go of their grievances. As Mile experienced immense pain, feeling as though her head would split apart, she and Danheng chanted the Buddha's name with unyielding focus. They didn't know how long they chanted, but eventually, a radiant light filled the room. In the vision, they saw the majestic figure of Amitabha Buddha appearing to lead the animals to liberation. Once the animals had disappeared, the light faded, and the room was filled with tranquility. Mile and Danheng stopped chanting, overcome with relief and gratitude. A story for generations. The story of Mile and Danheng, their past lives as Princess Thanghoa and the Prince Consort, and their journey of repentance and redemption became widely known among the Buddhist community in northern Taiwan. This tale serves as a reminder of the power of karma, the importance of repentance, and the boundless compassion of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May all who read this story find inspiration to cultivate kindness, let go of past grievances, and walk the path of enlightenment. Conclusion. Through this story of karma, redemption, and spiritual awakening, we are reminded that every action leaves a mark and that it's never too late to seek forgiveness and change for the better. What lesson from this tale resonated with you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching and joining us on this journey. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and comment to spread the inspiration. And remember to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories of wisdom and transformation. See you next time.